The detention block of the Vrelian warship reeked of ozone and despair. Xeranth's crystalline scales scraped against the energy barrier of his containment cell as he watched the scene unfolding 3 chambers down. His serpentine eyes, ancient and knowing, tracked every moment of the interrogation with a predator's focus. The human girl was small, fragile. Her designation was Arya Wynn. According to the data stream his neural implant had intercepted, she couldn't have been more than 20 standard cycles old, her frame slight even by her species standards. The Vrelian interrogators towered over her, their chitinous exoskeletons clicking with anticipation. Xeranth had seen torture before. In his 4 centuries of existence, he had witnessed the fall of empires and the breaking of warriors. But what the Vrelians did to Arya Wynn over the next 6 hours transcended mere physical pain. They used neural disruptors that sent cascading fire through synapses, gravitational wells that crushed bones slowly, methodically, psionic probes that tore through memories like talons through flesh. The human girl screamed until her voice cracked and failed. She convulsed against her restraints until blood ran from her wrists. Her eyes rolled back as the pain receptors in her brain were forced into overdrive again and again, and still, she gave them nothing. Xeranth's tail lashed against the barrier, sending sparks into the darkness. The dragon species of Xearnathor were not given to emotion easily, but something about the human's defiance stirred a memory he had long buried, a memory of his own people before the Vrelians had come, before they had learned what it meant to kneel. The interrogation ended when Arya Wynn finally slumped in her restraints, unconscious. The Vrelians left her hanging there, her head lolling forward, blonde hair matted with sweat and blood. Commander Vrelks chittered his satisfaction to his subordinates as they exited the cell block. "The human will break tomorrow," the commander said, his translator rendering the words into standard galactic. "They always do. This one just needs more encouragement." The lights dimmed to night cycle. The ship's engines hummed their eternal song. Xeranth remained awake, watching the motionless form in the distant cell. Hours passed. 4, 5, 6. Then something impossible happened. Arya Wynn's fingers twitched. Xeranth's pupils dilated, his ancient instincts flaring to life. He leaned forward, pressing against the barrier, ignoring the burn of energy against his scales. The human girl's head lifted slowly. Her eyes opened, bloodshot, ringed with bruises but burning with something that made Xeranth's breath catch in his throat. It wasn't just defiance. It wasn't mere stubbornness. It was calculation. Arya Wynn looked down at her restraints, then up at the security sensors in her cell. Her lips moved, though no sound emerged. She was counting, measuring. Her fingers flexed experimentally against the neural inhibitors at her wrists, testing their charge patterns. Then she smiled. It was a small thing, that smile, broken and bloody, but it carried the weight of a species that had clawed its way up from primordial mud, that had split the atom and bent space-time itself to its will, a species that, when pushed to the edge, pushed back harder. Over the next hour, Xeranth watched in fascination as Arya Wynn began to work. She used the residual charge from the neural disruptors still lingering in her nervous system, agony that would have left most species catatonic, to create a feedback loop in the restraint system. She timed her movements to the patrol cycles she'd memorized during her torture. She twisted broken fingers to reach circuit panels that should have been impossible to access. When the restraints finally sparked and released, she didn't collapse. She stood, her legs shook. Blood dripped from a dozen wounds, but Arya Wynn stood and she moved with purpose toward the cell's control interface. Her knowledge of Vrelian technology shouldn't have been possible, except that during those 6 hours of torture, while screaming, while breaking, she had been studying, learning. Every system they'd used against her, she'd cataloged and analyzed. Humans, Xeranth realized with dawning awe, didn't just endure pain, they weaponized it. The barriers dropped with a whisper of dying energy. Arya stumbled into the corridor, made her way to Xeranth's cell, and looked up at the massive dragon with eyes that held no fear. "You're Xeranth of Xearnathor," she said, her voice a ruined rasp. "I've read about your people. The Vrelians destroyed your world 30 years ago." She coughed, spitting blood. "I'm getting us out of here. You in?" Xeranth stared at this impossible creature. This human who should have been broken beyond repair, standing before him with a bleeding smile and a plan burning in her eyes. "How?" he asked simply. Arya's grin widened. The same way my species has survived every extinction event, every predator, every cosmic disaster that should have killed us. She tapped her temple with a shaking finger. We're too stubborn to know when we're beaten, and too clever to stay down when we fall. She entered the override sequence she'd pieced together from observation and deduction. Zyranth's barrier fell. The dragon stepped forward, his 400-year-old rage finally finding direction. They will pay for what they did to you. Arya Wynn picked up a fallen energy weapon, checking its charge with hands that still trembled from torture. They'll pay for what they did to both our peoples. She looked up at him, and in her eyes Zyranth saw the future the Vrelians should have feared. Let's teach them why you never cage a human, and expect them to stay caged. As alarms began to wail and the warship descended into chaos, Zyranth understood something the galaxy had yet to learn. Humanity's greatest strength wasn't their technology or their numbers. It was their absolute refusal to accept that anything was impossible, even victory in the face of certain defeat. Hours later, when the Vrelian reinforcements arrived at the smoldering wreck of their warship, they found only 2 sets of tracks leading into the escape pods, and a message burned into the hull in draconic fire and human defiance: "We're coming for the rest." The Torment had been meant to break Arya Wynn. Instead, it had forged something far more dangerous, an alliance between an ancient dragon's fury and a young human's indomitable will. The galaxy would never be the same,